Hi, everyone. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Jenny, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's a great sunny day today. It's quite nice.
Okay.
So, yes, welcome back to day 3. So, we are now halfway through our gut health challenge. I think we've done a whole lot already. Covered oral health and stomach health so far. So, if you've missed those, please go back and listen to those recordings. Lots of information and practical stuff that you can start to implement. And just want to say thank you for those who are interacting. Okay, it's awesome to have your comments and please post some photos, post some pics of your drink, or let us know what you're doing, what you've started with, and what your kind of takeaways have been from the session so far. So let us know, what have you found useful? What have you been able to implement? What would you like to know more about? And be great to hear more from you. Anyway, so yes, I think we are ready to get going with the third part of our challenge, which is now, which is the small intestine. And I'm super excited to get into that. It's a complex area. So I shall hand over to you, Steve. You can start.
I tell you what, this has been, in prepping for this, because this is kind of how I see, particularly small intestine, but gut in general. But particularly when we start getting into this, I see it like the engine room in a ship. And anyone's ever been on a big ship and looked at engine rooms, the fundamental issue, everyone knows they're super important because without it, you can't do anything. But number one, no one wants to go down there because it's dirty and it's dark and so on. And the other thing is no one knows how it works. So you've got like one old engineer who knows everything about them, and no one else has any idea about what's going on. And as someone who's quite new to this functional medicine approach, I can vouch for that because, and we see it in sort of clinical medicine in other, in our practice every day, because if you don't understand something, you just kind of stay away from it. And that's the real challenge that people have, because the conditions that when it goes bad, particularly in the small intestine, it can go really, really bad. So, you're talking about conditions like Graves' disease, Crohn's, and and the genesis of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. They're all kind of, and it makes sense because that's your engine room. That's where all the energy comes from. That's where the nutrients enter the bloodstream. So, but traditional medicine is to stay away from it. So if you take the ship analogy, what you do as the ship gets kind of not doing so well, you just put new cabins in, you paint the ship nicely, you find a way to make it more streamlined. But at the end of the day, if the engine stops, you stop. Literally, you stop. It might not necessarily sink, right then and there, but if you stop in the ocean for long enough, you'll sink. So I think the analogy is a good one. And for me, this is where functional medicine has fundamentally parted ways from allopathic medicine, because functional medicine understand that it's the most important thing that you need to address. They've rolled up their sleeves and they really understand it. So I tell patients as well in our programs, that this is where, if you want to understand what functional medicine people do, this is what differentiates Jenny from the rest, because this is an understanding of what's going on down there in the engine room. And we'll come back to this analogy, but another thing, in big ships, you can't go to the engine room alone. That's a rule. And I think that's a really good one too. You don't want to be getting into this kind of, if something goes bad in this part of your gut, go with a professional, because you need to make sure you're not alone. It's a bad neighborhood. You don't want to be down there alone. So that's kind of how I see this, the small intestine thing. So I'm going to ask you, Jenny, now. So so why is this so important? Why is this the small intestine place? Last thing is, we must understand this is bug world. Bugwort. We spoke about bugwort. This is where the bugs live. There's 100 trillion bacteria that live in your small intestine and large intestine. 100 trillion. They outnumber us 10 to 1. And they make everything. They make your hormones, your neurotransmitters. They digest your food. They do those things. So you want to make sure there's good ones in there. Because if the bad ones are in there, you've got chaos. You've got madness if you've got the bad actors down there. So yeah. So why, Jenny, is this thing so important? How does it all work?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, as you're saying, I mean, those bugs are super important. 100 trillion of them, and they influence our mood. They, 90% of our neurotransmitters, things like serotonin and dopamine, are made in our gut, not our brain. So people battling with depression or anxiety, a lot of it is actually coming from the gut and not the brain. So such a huge role that they play in our bodies and in our overall health. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, one of the key aspects of functional medicine obviously is the role of the gut microbiome, and is that collection of trillions of microbes that are living in our digestive tract, and it influences, as I just said, I mean, so many things. But aside from those, your immunity, a lot of 80% of our immune system is in our gut, so it plays a massive role in immunity. It influences our metabolism. It influences inflammation in our bodies. Lots of inflammatory markers in our gut, and as I say, I mean, our mood. So plays a huge role in all of those kind of things. So yeah, as the so we really, I mean, we need to set the stage for our small intestine, and we set the stage with the last 2 days that we've done. Okay, so starting with oral health and then stomach health, so that we are able to optimize what is going from our stomach into our gut. Okay. And so the pH of the food in the stomach is super important. The food in our stomach is called chyme. If you go back to your old biology days, you might remember that. And the pH of that chyme influences the release of bile from your liver and your gallbladder, and it influences the digestive enzymes that are stimulated by the pancreas. So if that pH is not optimal, your pancreas is not going to function properly and your liver is not going to function properly. So again, coming back to the basics, that foundation in your stomach, super, super important. Okay, so some common symptoms that can result from a disrupted small intestine, obviously, again, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, lack of energy, apathy, gut pain. I mean, as Steve mentioned, there's some significant diseases that can start in your gut, and things like Crohn's disease, various of those things, diverticulitis, but also your autoimmune conditions tend to start there. So really important that we take note of that. If you have a leaky gut, that will be a very, very big factor in autoimmune conditions. So
touch on that. Will you touch on that? We've come across this. We've come across this disconnect here with traditional, with allopathic medicine, and why? So what does it mean? So what does leaky gut mean, and how does it become such a massive issue?
So I mean, your gut is basically one cell thick. Okay, there is one cell that lines your gut. So yeah, I mean, it's not a lot, obviously, you can imagine. And between those cells, there are what we call tight junctions that prevent anything from leaving the gut. Okay. But obviously, if there is disruption there, can be foods, can be, obviously, as we've mentioned, pesticides, chemicals, medication, different things can start to disrupt your gut. And that can start to loosen those tight junctions that are keeping all of those cells in place. And what happens then is that food moves from your intestine into your blood. So I think you put it really nicely earlier, Steve. I mean, what is that? We've got one cell.
Between you can... and your blood.
Yeah, one cell between your sewer and your blood. Absolutely. So like that's hectic. Okay. If you think, I mean, if that sewer starts to leak into your bloodstream, you're going to get sick. Okay. And it's going to cause all kinds of diseases. So making sure that that lining is protected and that sewer is functioning well is one of the most important things that we can do for our health. Absolutely.
So I would assume that with 70% of our immune system living there, in our gut, our bodies, it's done it for a reason. Now, there's nothing that's done by chance. So the fact that 70% of our immune system is present there, if something enters the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, that is going to trigger an immune response. Because that's the enemy, and the enemy is in the house. And that's what the immune system's job is.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what happens. Your food or whatever leaks across from your gut into your bloodstream, and then the body recognizes that and starts to launch an immune defense because it's not supposed to be there. It is a foreign body, and that is the start of autoimmune conditions. So yeah, if you want to heal an autoimmune condition, you've got to start with the gut. And the difficulty is that testing the small intestine is really difficult. Okay. It's easy to test, the end part, the rectum, or to do an oral swab. Those we can all do. But testing what is going on in your small intestine is a lot more complicated. So we end up having to make certain assumptions based on the tests and the results that we get. And that is, it's just why I want to re-emphasize the importance of optimizing, the areas that go before the gut, your stomach health and your oral health, so that those we can control much easier. And yeah, make sure you're doing that.
Yep. Okay. So as I understand it, if we start looking at potential strategies here, because that's what we do here. We want to talk about practical solutions and not just what the problem is. As I understand it, is that we're looking at potentially 3 really big sort of blocks of things that we can do and everyone can do to maximize your opportunity. And that is different kinds of foods. So fermented food, which I really want to ask you about and get you to speak about what that is and why that's important. Fiber, which is if you listen to Dr. Rob Rustig, this is his kind of space. This is saying fiber's gone from our diet. That's what we've sacrificed for convenience. So fiber is an important one. Fermented foods is an important one, and then this probiotic thing. That's another buzzword like ADD, and everyone talks probiotics and whatever. And so those are the 3 things I'd like to ask you about. And maybe we can start with this fermented foods thing. What's this all about?
Absolutely. So the research has really shown that, for ultimate diversity of the microbiome, it's really fermented foods are your best option to create that diversity. Time and time again, they've done studies and control groups and all of that stuff, looked at fermented foods versus high fiber foods. And the fermented foods come out over and over better with gut microbiome diversity than the high fiber foods. So if we are trying to create a diversity in our microbiome, fermented foods is your go-to. Okay, so that's where you need to be looking at. That's where you need to start. And they're super easy to bring into your diet. So what are these fermented foods? You know, offhand, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles. You get lots of different kinds of pickles, okay? I mean, cucumber, beetroot, ginger, onions, carrots, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of different pickles that you can do. So those are awesome. But again, with those pickled kind of things, and even with the sauerkraut, okay, I wouldn't recommend buying store-bought products because they are heat treated. You know, they're heated so that they don't perish, obviously. Okay, so in that heating process, they are destroying everything. So all of those awesome bacteria that we're wanting are killed off. Okay, so either make it yourself, which is, you know, it's not difficult to make. There are recipes that you can find to make sauerkraut and things like that, pickled beetroot, pickled onions. It's not complicated. But otherwise, you know, your local farmers markets, I know there's an awesome organic market, you know, not far from us. And, you know, we often get sauerkraut there. And yeah, so those kind of options are brilliant. And then in terms of drinks as well, you get things like your kefirs. And that can be either dairy or non-dairy, depending on you know, your tolerance and what you prefer there. So those are all options in terms of fermented foods. Yeah, so the one thing, you know, people might end up jumping in with, you know, lots of fermented foods now, thinking, okay, and now, you know, I'll have a whole plate full of sauerkraut. And suddenly you have a massive reaction and you think, oh my goodness, I feel terrible. So go easy on it. Okay, if you are not used to fermented foods, start slow. You know, a teaspoonful a day is great. Okay, so start there and then slowly build it up so that you don't overdo it. Okay, otherwise you're going to end up bloated and uncomfortable and whatever. Okay, so just take care, and you may have to play around with it a little bit and just figure out, you know, how much is optimal for you. Okay, how much can you tolerate, and just work with that. So yeah, be careful with those kind of things so that you don't end up with a reaction in your gut as well. So, all right, let's go a little bit more into the fermented foods. Okay, obviously, as we've said, you know, number one is that they contain a whole lot of live active cultures of probiotics. Okay, so what are probiotics? They are the good bacteria. Okay, they're our friendly bacteria, and we want lots of those in our gut. So they can colonize the gut. And just create diversity of the microbiome and so on in your gut. They can also help prevent and treat some digestive disorders, such as irritable bowel disease, inflammatory bowel disease, diarrhea, constipation, all of those kind of things. So very good for those things. Second is that they can also, fermented foods can provide prebiotics. So what are prebiotics? These are fibers that you know, they're basically substances that feed the existing gut microbiome. So they feed those bacteria in our guts, and therefore we need the right prebiotics so that we are getting the right probiotics in our guts. Okay, and so they also stimulate their activity and their growth, you know, the more we feed them, obviously the more they're going to grow and they're going to populate our gut, and that is good for us. We want the good ones and not the bad ones. The other thing that prebiotics do is that they improve the production of short chain fatty acids in our gut. And these are beneficial metabolites that nourish the intestinal cells and that regulate inflammation. So one of the things we do in the stool testing we do is we look for inflammatory markers. And if there's a lot of inflammatory markers, we need to increase those short chain fatty acids to start to regulate that inflammation that's going on in the gut. Okay. And then the third thing that they do is modulate the immune system. Okay. So they just, you know, help to down regulate that immune system, because obviously if you've got a lot of inflammation and a lot of issues going on in your gut, your immune system becomes inflamed. Also, like we said earlier, with a leaky gut. So that helps just to modulate that inflammation and your immune system. So there's a study by Stanford researchers did a 10-week diet high in fermented foods, okay, and they found that it increased the microbiome diversity a lot, and it decreased 19 inflammatory markers in healthy adults. So, like, that's amazing. And then another study found that fermented foods reduced the risk of developing allergies in children. So, yeah. So that's our challenge to you today, okay, is bring in a fermented food. Decide whatever you want to do and post a picture into the group today of what you are going to do, what you're going to take. And the big trick here is that you don't want to do it once off, okay? We're all good at like doing things once off, and we'll, you know, find something and try this and try that. You've got to make it into a daily habit. You've got to start incorporating those foods into your lifestyle. So changing habits, okay? Habits take 21 days to change. So bring this in and start to have a teaspoonful every single day and slowly increase that and see how you go. So yeah, so, you know, if you don't bring in the right foods to feed these good bacteria, you're not going to be able to digest your food properly. And that is where, you know, that starts to create a breeding ground for SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that's where things start to go bad in your gut, in your small intestine, is when you start to get the bad bacteria that are overgrowing the good ones, and you start to end up with all these different.
And what about fiber?
Sorry?
What about fiber?
What about fiber? Absolutely. So fiber is massively important. Okay. It plays a big role in just providing fuel for those bacteria. It promotes regular bowel movements and it modulates inflammation. So really, really important to, you know, to be getting high fiber foods into your diet as well. They really do play a big role. They can treat and help to prevent various conditions as well. Things like your leaky gut, your SIBO, your irritable bowel syndrome, and so on. And what I'm finding, you know, generally with the people that I'm working with, is just that there's a lack of diversity of food as a whole, and particularly in terms of, you know, variety in terms of vegetables. So bringing in different types of food and different types of vegetables specifically. Okay, grow your own. Go and, you know, have a look around. A lot of our weeds are super healthy foods. And yeah, just bring in different kinds of foods that helps to create that variety.
And then I suppose that kind of the question is, and we see this a lot, is that so we've got both hands tied behind our back when we try and do this. The food industry has given us what we want, which is convenience. It's given us exactly what we want. But and when you try and not do that, it's very difficult. So if we need to support that from a product perspective, what kind of recommendations would you give to people around the correct sort of base support products for your intestine?
Absolutely. So there is a product called Zymozyme, okay, from Zymogen, and this can help to improve digestion and help to prevent bloating that some people experience from these foods. Okay, so some people battle with high fiber foods and so on, and just bringing in some of these digestive enzymes can make a difference just in helping to digest that. It is one of our recommended products. It is there in the bundle, and yeah, again, I mean, if you've got undigested food going through your small intestine, that can create an immune reaction as well. So you want to make sure that you're digesting your food, because you also need to absorb it to be able to help your body be healthy. So if it is not digested, then you can't absorb it, and then you're not going to get the nutrients. So even if you are eating all the right stuff, if your body is not able to absorb it, you still cannot be healthy. So yes, super important that we are looking for that, okay? Then there is another one called glutalomine, also by Zymogen. Very good product, very soothing and healing for the gut. Helps to repair the gut lining if you are battling with any of those issues. So very good foundational gut health product. Then there is Probiomax IG26. Now, this is an immunoglobulin to help just upregulate and boost your immune system if we need to. And it is based on egg, okay? But that doesn't mean that if you are egg sensitive that you can't use it. And what we actually find is that people who are egg sensitive, when they use this, it's a hyperimmunized egg supplement. It actually helps to reduce the intolerance or sensitivities to foods or egg in general. So yes, very, very good product just to boost the immune system. And then the last product is a probiotic. It is called Probiomax SBDF 30. Okay, also with Zymogen. A very nice, high quality, diverse probiotic. And what I am going to do as well, what we're going to do is just post into, make a post into the group of a SIBO yogurt that you can actually make yourself. Okay, super simple, really tasty, and just a great thing that you can do at home. And we do incorporate one of the probiotics into that. So you use the probiotic to make that yogurt. So you're getting all of those great bacteria. And it's just a great way you can add it into your breakfast in the morning. And that's a fermented food then as well. So there's, we will send a recipe that you can look at there as well.
Awesome. All right. So
just to say, yes, we have. I mean, have a look. All of those products, we have put them into a bundle. They are under guides, I believe, Steve.
I'll make a specific post today to the bundle. But yes, they are. There's a guide specifically that talks about supplements for the gut health challenge. If you look in the guides, you'll find it there. But I will create a specific post after this.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So guides is there at the top of the group if you're like me and not technologically competent. And we have given a nice discount on all of those products as well. So for the gut health challenge, we've created a discount for anyone who does want to purchase those products. Yeah,
Well,
I
that's so.
think that wraps our day
This was
3 up.
yeah. I mean, we wrap up, and as I said, this is kind of a bit of alchemy for me. This is kind of where that you really do need, and I want to repeat that. I think if you struggle with your gut health, this is where you need to start working with a professional. Like the functional medicine practitioner is very important. Yeah. So if I can summarize what I've learned today, we need to make sure that the stage is set. We need to make sure that our oral health and our stomach health is optimized. Once we've done that, we need to make sure we're getting fermented foods and high fiber foods, without a doubt. And if we can't, and even if we can, I mean, the bottom line is we just can't get the variety and quality that we probably need. That you need to support, if you do have a vulnerable gut, you do need to support your gut with good products, and not just simply a off-the-shelf probiotic that you get at your local pharmacy. So it's quite important to do that versus.
Yeah.
And then today's challenge, we'll do some fermented foods today as well, and then post that in the group. So please go ahead and do that. And tomorrow is liver. We talk liver
tomorrow we move on to the liver, absolutely.
So
one more comment, just for people, to understand. Gut health. I mean, our gut cells actually turn over every 3 to 4 days. So that turnover of those cells is really rapid. So if you're doing the right things, you should be able to improve your health quite quickly. And so there's really no excuse not to be doing all of these things. They're super simple, and
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Okay. Have a great day. We shall see you tomorrow again, and let us know how you go.